Did you know that a simple 1983 Jefferson nickel could hide a value story that links American history? Minting errors, collector secrets, and hidden fortunes. So get ready, because in this video, we dig deeper than any coin book ever will and reveal why this little nickel from 1983 can open the vault to a forgotten chapter of U.S. coinage and possibly your wallet. In the vast timeline of American coinage history, the year 1983 stands out, not because of grand events, but because of the hidden tales etched into the humble Jefferson nickel. When we trace the roots, we must start with the man himself, Thomas Jefferson, whose vision of a strong, independent republic still echoes through the marble halls of Washington, D.C. His face chosen to represent the 5-cent piece since 1938 stands as a testament to his legacy and the promise of American resilience in 1983. The United States Mint was in a unique place. The economic shifts of the early 80s inflation, the lingering effects of the energy crisis, and the changing priorities of the Federal Reserve all played a role in how coins were minted and circulated. The Jefferson nickel had already seen decades of evolution. The wartime nickels of 1942 through 1945 had altered its composition to save nickel for the war effort. The return to the copper-nickel alloy after the war signaled stability. Yet by the early 80s, subtle changes were brewing. Collectors began to notice inconsistencies in strikes and planche quality. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were pushing out millions of coins daily. Yet the quality control sometimes struggled to keep up with the sheer demand in the case of the 1983 Jefferson nickel. This meant that some coins escaped the mint with significant die errors, off-center strikes, double strikes, and weak strikes. These anomalies today drive collectors into bidding wars at auctions, while the average circulated 1983 nickel may only fetch face value. Certain mint state examples, especially those with full steps designation, are prized beyond belief. The full steps term refers to the clarity of the steps on Monticello Jefferson's iconic home depicted on the E. Reverse. For decades, numismatists have used the full steps detail as a benchmark for strike quality, because getting a coin with fully struck steps means the dies were perfectly aligned. The planche was pristine, and the pressure was ideal in 1983. Full steps nickels are challenging to find because the minting technology and worn dies often left steps partially struck. The hunt for these coins is an adventure that draws coin hunters to rolls bags and estate sales across the nation. But the story does not stop there. We must consider the economic backdrop. President Reagan was deep into his economic reform plans, cutting taxes, ramping up military spending, and negotiating international deals. These factors indirectly impacted the mint by adjusting how budgets were allocated, what metals were sourced, and how the mints were modernized. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by a P mint mark, had fully transitioned to using the P since 1980, and in 1983, its production of nickels was massive, yet the scrutiny on quality was not as tight as collectors today would wish it to be. The Denver Mint, known for the D mint mark, produced its own batch with similar quirks. The San Francisco Mint, however, focused on proof sets. These coins, mirror-like and struck multiple times, were intended for collectors, and they too carry the legacy of the 1983 nickel, but with a shine that adds layers to the story. The market for these coins fluctuates as new discoveries surface. Imagine an original bank-wrapped roll from 1983, surfacing in some forgotten safety deposit box. The thrill that collectors feel when tearing through that paper, searching for the elusive gem mint state with full steps, or a spectacular double die error, is what keeps the passion alive across forums, coin shows, and online marketplaces. The tales of 1983 Jefferson nickels weave into the greater narrative of American coin collecting. The metal composition remains 75% copper and 25% nickel. But the real value lies not in the metal content, but in the story. The rarity, the condition, and the demand. The nickel may not hold the silver value of older coins, but its historical weight is undeniable. Numismatics teaches us that even the most common coin can carry an uncommon story. We look at auction records and find that a pristine MS-66 full steps can command hundreds of dollars, While an average circulated nickel may never see the light of a coin slab, but do not dismiss the lower grades, because even worn examples can hide errors like broad strikes, clips, and cud breaks that increase desirability to specialists in error-collecting communities. So when you hold a 1983 Jefferson nickel between your fingers, you hold decades of minting tradition and the promise of discovery. Now let us travel deeper into the production process. The mint used high-speed presses and plancher feeding systems that in the 80s were advancing yet far from the laser-guided precision of today's dies would wear down, and maintenance schedules varied. The result was coins struck with weak devices, blurred details, and the occasional misaligned die clash. Each flaw became a gem for collectors, who chased the unusual over the mundane during this period. The coin collecting community was also shifting with the rise of coin shows, local clubs, and the expansion of the American Numismatic Association. Resources were more accessible. But so were counterfeits, which made authentication and grading ever more critical. The grading companies like PCGS and NGC rose in prominence, giving buyers and sellers confidence in their transactions. For the 1983 Jefferson nickel, these companies became gatekeepers of value as they assigned grades and full steps designations that could multiply a coin's worth overnight. There is also the cultural context to consider. The early 80s were an era of pop culture, explosions, economic uncertainty, and technological shifts. The American pocket change jingled alongside Atari cartridges and cassette tapes. Yet only a few people at that time thought much about keeping nickels for future value. They were spent at diners, arcades, and gas stations, never realizing that someday collectors would be willing to pay a premium for an uncirculated piece. While we sit here today discussing the details, thousands of these coins rest forgotten in drawers, jars, and Coinstar reject bins waiting to be rediscovered. This is why roll hunting remains a beloved hobby for many. The thrill of opening a fresh bankroll hoping to find that needle in a haystack is unmatched. Now we look at notable auction stories. Take the tale of a collector who found an uncirculated 1983 D nickel with perfect full steps that coin-graded MS-66 full steps fetched a surprising sum, far exceeding its face value, because supply and demand in numismatics are not just about mintage numbers. They are about survival rates, condition, rarity, and market interest. The story of the 1983 Jefferson nickel reminds us that patience, research, and an eye for detail can turn everyday change into a historical artifact. As our journey continues, we must also honor the engravers. Felix Schlag, the original designer, created a timeless portrait that still graces the obverse decades later. His design stood the test of time with only slight modifications. This consistency allows collectors to focus on subtleties, the way the strike quality reveals itself. The steps of Monticello, the presence of die Polish lines or clash marks. Every mark tells a story, and every scratch is a window into the minting process. We must not overlook the role of coin dealers who act as historians, educators, and treasure hunters. They spread the word about key dates, varieties, and pricing trends. Their coin shops and bourse tables are filled with tales of great finds, like the elusive 1983 full steps nickel that sat unnoticed in a junk bin only to be discovered by a sharp-eyed collector who turned a 5-cent piece into a prize worth hundreds. These stories feed the legend and keep the hobby alive through generations. As we draw this narrative to the present day, the world of online collecting adds another layer. With online marketplaces and forums, collectors from all corners of the world can share discoveries, images, and price data, pushing the value of these coins higher. When a new die variety is verified, the news spreads like wildfire, sometimes overnight changing what was once considered common into a key date for specialists. This dynamic, community-driven valuation is what makes numismatics more than just a hobby. It is a living, breathing archive of our nation's history. The 1983 Jefferson nickel is a reminder that history is not always found in museums. Sometimes it sits in your pocket change, waiting for you to look closer. So next time you come across a nickel from 1983, flip it over. Study the steps. Run your fingers along the rim. Check for doubling, weak strikes, or off-center designs. You might just find that your ordinary coin is a portal to a hidden world of stories, auctions, and legacy. This is the magic that keeps collectors searching, the thrill that turns a handful of coins into a lifetime passion. The Jefferson nickel from 1983 is not just a piece of metal. It is a time capsule, and its story is still being written every time someone finds one in an old roll, every time an auction hammer drops on a record-breaking sale, and every time a new collector discovers the joy of the hunt. This is why we tell these stories, and why this humble nickel deserves a place in your collection and your memory.